All right, we're going to start by talking about the News Project itself. So the News Literacy Project is a project to increase awareness of the prevalence and bias of media in everyday American life, especially among high school students. Students from across the country were selected to attend a workshop to become media watchdogs and present a report over one facet of the media in relation to the 2012 presidential election. The workshop itself was pretty unexpected. We all arrived with different preconceived notions of what the workshop was, and we were all wrong. We worked alongside professionals in the field of journalism who taught us necessary components of journalism itself. For example, we worked alongside Alicia Shepard, who's the ombudsman for NPR. And the experience we gained there, we will never, ever forget. At the workshops, we spent 3 days, 9 hours a day, in a professional business setting. It was basically a business meeting, but with a bunch of high school students. We each had mentors in each of the groups. Dana and Josh worked with Jamie Gold, who's the former editor of the San Diego Union Tribune, and Chris and I worked alongside Clark Hoyt, who is the ombudsman for Bloomberg. Now we're going to talk about the project ourselves, and Chris is going to tell you what we did.
Okay. Our facet was to investigate the corrections policies of various news sources, such as newspapers in both print and online form, radio stations, and TV news stations. Our project has a second component. Any corrections the other groups find in the course of their projects were to be reported to us, and we would include them in our report. We never heard from any of the other groups after the workshop, so we assumed they never found any corrections. The first newspaper we looked at was the New York Times, because we were told they're pretty good. Further research found that they're the gold standard in terms of corrections policies, as they have an online form to request corrections. They print corrections on the second page of their newspaper, and they post corrections at the bottom of an online article with an explanation as to why it was wrong. The Chicago Tribune, we quickly found out, was the absolute worst, as they don't have a corrections policy, and there's not a whole lot more you can say for them. KCCI doesn't have an official written policy, but they have a general unofficial policy of correcting things and just doing it right the first time. And if you do mess up, fix it as quickly as possible and say, we made a mistake, as they find that that actually increases their credibility. And generally this means that the New York Times is the best, and the Chicago Tribune is the worst, and having your policies up front and up to date makes your credibility increase. This is important because through the use of corrections within articles, a news source increases their credibility, and it's always sure to give you the newest and most accurate information if they're held accountable. Especially with the election 2 days away, and you should definitely all go vote if you haven't already. Voters need to be able to receive accurate information about their presidential candidates that is up to date and true. Examples of falsehoods in the campaigns. This was a clip from a Obama rally in Virginia.
If you got a business, that you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen.
And when taken out of context, it sounds like he's telling small business owners that they didn't build their business. But the actual clip shows that he's talking about the infrastructure that the businesses use in the course of everyday operation.
If you were successful, somebody along the line gave you some help. There was a great teacher somewhere in your life. Somebody helped to create this unbelievable American system that we had that allowed you to thrive. Somebody invested in roads and bridges. If you got a business, that you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen.
He later goes on to talk about how the internet was another thing the government invested in and made that happen, which small businesses use fairly extensively to make money. But they didn't build that. But they need to help through taxes pay for the further continuation of infrastructure in the United States. And now Sarah will talk about another campaign gaffe.
All right, it's not only the Republicans who get things wrong. We have a clip that was an ad for Obama. I'm sure many of you saw it, but I will play it for you really quickly.
I've never felt this way before, but it's a scary time to be a woman. Mitt Romney is just so out of touch.
Mitt Romney opposes requiring insurance coverage for contraception, and Romney supports overturning Roe v. Wade. Romney backed a bill that outlaws all abortion, even in cases of rape and incest.
There's so much we need to do. We need to attack our problems, not a woman's choice.
I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
All right, so this makes it out to seem that Romney is taking away all women's choices. However, Romney doesn't approve Obamacare, and because some of those things are in fine print in Obamacare, they took that out of context and made an ad about it that appeals to women voters. So that's another example of how people stretch the truth when it comes to media. Another thing, not in politics, is a chain email that went out a few years ago, and I'm going to read it to you now, if you can't see it. So it says, in memorial, this week the UK removed the Holocaust from its school curriculum because it offended the Muslim population, which claims it never occurred. This is a frightening portion of the fear that is gripping the world and how easily each country is giving into it. It is now more than 60 years after the Second World War in Europe ended. This email is being sent as a memorial chain, a memorial of the 6 million Jews, 20 million Russians, 10 million Christians, and 1,900 Catholic priests who were murdered, massacred, raped, burned, starved, and humiliated while the German and Russian peoples looked the other way. Now more than ever, with Iran, among others, claiming the Holocaust to be a myth, it is imperative to make sure the world never forgets. This email is intended to reach 40 million people worldwide. Be a link in the memorial chain and help distribute this around the world. Don't just delete this. It will take a minute to pass along. Now, Chris is going to share with you why I just read this to you.
This is completely false on so many levels. It was just a chain email that someone sent out to gain attention for whatever. And first of all, the UK never wanted to remove the Holocaust. Second of all, the Muslim world doesn't believe the Holocaust never happened. And the numbers there are fairly accurate. Within the realm of that, we haven't looked at them specifically and scientific error. But it's generally trying to make people have that feeling that this is really bad, we need to do something, and try to draw attention to something that doesn't really happen through the use of lies, for a simple way of putting it. And it just shows that even in social media, you have to be careful as to what you read, as it's not always accurate. Most recently, with Hurricane Sandy, people have been posting images onto Twitter and Facebook that are pretty impressive, but completely false. Maybe you've seen the ones, for those of you who look at social media, of a huge wave going around the Statue of Liberty. It's actually taken from The Day After Tomorrow, which is a movie about the apocalypse in 2012. Another one is this supercell over New York City, which actually was supposedly taken about a day before the storm even reached New York. And generally, it means that everything, no matter where you get the information from, needs to be taken with a grain of salt. And now Dana and Josh are going to talk about how you identify what needs to be taken with a few more grains of salt than other things.